that I think I might have mentioned last time too, because we've been struggling with that for a while. But that'll be a good thing. It also will allow for something called Get Large File Storage, which I think I've mentioned in the past. EMC over at NCEP is in the process of ramping up on use of VLab for all of their modeling code, and as part of that conversion, they're also moving from Subversion to Git, so it's a pretty big deal. And they need a way to be able to store larger files in certain cases within the repositories. Git really isn't intended to handle that, but there's a workaround or a technical solution using something called Get Large File Storage, and the newest version, or a more up-to-date version of Garrett supports that. So anyway, we're moving on that. Before I left, I sent out an update with regard to the new look and feel, and I haven't seen a lot of traffic regarding that. So I think we'll be moving forward. I need to confirm that before we do, but we should be moving forward with a new theme, and so that should be a good thing. I think most people find, or I haven't heard anyone say that they don't like it, so that's a good thing. So that's the look and feel here for item 27795. So the migration of cards, I need to bump that out. The developer that's been working on that, we've made a lot of progress there, but we need more input from the owner of cards. Cards is a requirement system that's being used for the weather service, and so that's being implemented within the VLab. So that's something that is ongoing. And the idea is marketplace. We've got a small issue there, and I'll check with the developer on the status of that ticket. So let's see. The next stuff has to do with, quickly viewing community owners. There was a solution that one of our developers put forward, and it wasn't scaling well. I think I might have mentioned the last time that we did implement the LDAP import, and that's in production now for VLCS. The implication there is that you don't have to require that someone logs into VLab before you add them to a community. All users within LDAP, known as LDAP, are within the VLCS. So, but that then was resulting in some performance issues for this community owners portlet. And what I mean by that, let me just show you really briefly. So this portlet here, or also if we go to the communities, I prefer the view there. It has all the communities that are available, and then also your communities. And within that page, there's this portlet, my communities, my available communities, and it's useful to be able to see the community owners. And so one of our other developers came up with a solution that scales well, and so I'll be testing that out on my system, and if that goes well, we should be able to roll that out quickly. It's a simple change in terms of rolling it out, but that's something that was desired, and that was the ability to know who are the community owners for each of these communities. So that's going to be coming very shortly. And I think, are there any specific questions? So those are the main things. I think I mentioned in the past too, we're doing planning with regard to the upgrade of VLab to LifeRay DXP. And with that, there will be new capabilities. One of the nice things there will be the ability to directly upload files from your computer into VLab, and that's an issue today, where you have to first upload it to VLab, and then you can include it in things like web content and others, whereas this will allow you to do it in one step, which is more intuitive. So that's one of the fixes, or one of the new capabilities. So are there specific questions regarding any particular issues from the vet?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
John, what's our next item on the agenda?
You're muted, John.
All right. Yeah, I think John's muted. But Steve, looks like you're next on the other. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So kind of dovetailing on Ken's comments, we seems to be the main thrust going on right now is the move from EMC's move into VLab, get subversion of get repos and other things related to modeling and the next generation global prediction system effort, which is a very large effort. Ken in particular is involved in a couple of teams, at least one which is a software infrastructure team that is engaged in trying to design how the sharing, the managing of the software codes are going to be done in the Get VLab world. It's involving external partners and all that, so it's a very large effort. I'm curious, Kate's on, Howard's there. I'm curious to hear from you, Kate, on your perspective sitting in NCEP on, how are things going and what your take is on the level of activity and so forth. Could you comment?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm actually directly involved in the move. I'm going to be one of the developers working on the FV3, so I'm going to be involved in all the bits and pieces. Everything seems to be going well so far. There's a lot of hesitation at first because it's such a big move. Took a while to get on Subversion, so everyone's nervous about learning Git, but we're throwing a lot of training at them. We have the community set up. We're doing the GFS first, making sure that's moved over, and then we're making sure to pull all the other models over one at a time. I want to try to break things first with the GFS and learn some things. I think it's really about a learning curve for all of us because we're throwing Git and VLab and a new modeling system at everybody at the same time. So there's a lot going on. Ken's been extremely helpful in this. It's been great to rely on him. So I think it's going pretty well. It's really just taking the time to make sure we're learning it all as we get over.
Great. I appreciate that. Sorry, as a observer sort of watching through email traffic in VLab, it's sometimes hard to tell. I was curious too I know VJ created this public page for the FV3, and do you have any assessment of how that's going? I think that's designed to allow people to know how, if they want the code, what they're supposed to do and that sort of thing? Yeah,
I actually made it for him. He told me to make it.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems to be going well so far. Ken helped make sure that our forms were set up correctly. I haven't heard any complaints. We've had a bunch of people from the outside come in, get on VLab, and then get access to the repository. So it seems to be going well so far. I haven't heard any complaints.
Wow. Excellent. Ken, do we have a way to put Google Analytics tracking on that particular page?
Yeah, we could definitely, it'll be captured under the main VLab right now, but if we want to capture it independently, we could definitely do that. Is that something we want to do?
That would actually be great information for us.
Yeah, if you want to, that would be a benefit. If we create a separate ID, which is under Google Analytics ID, then we can make you guys owners of it too, or have permission to get access to all that information. So that probably makes sense. So I'll go ahead and take an action item to take care of that today.
Wonderful.
The other things I guess I would mention from the standpoint of transparency, Ken mentioned we're moving to this DXP form of LifeRay. It's a large upgrade for us, providing new functionality. There's an increased cost, a significant increased cost to it, and so I'm currently in the process of working with the various portfolios inside of the National Weather Service to determine which of the existing portfolios should rightfully pay for this, and so it's kind of an interesting exercise because somehow appropriations law gets involved, and part of the discussion is on whether VLab is operational or not operational and that sort of thing, and if it's O&M versus development, that kind of thing. The discussions continue. A decision hasn't yet to be made, but hopefully I'll get an accounting code out of all of this, and then we can actually buy a license.
What was the increased cost related
to? Well, it's complicated, but I mean, the old license we had no longer exists. It was sort of a I don't know, middle of the road license, I'll call it like that, and it was basically allows us to run in the College Park site of IDP, but with our hopefully sometime soon standing up in Boulder, that would not have worked. So we had to, at a minimum, buy another old license to support Boulder, but that license is no longer offered. And then we had, a number of outstanding functionality requirements that the DXP would just resolve right then and there and provide us with additional capabilities that we don't have, so we elected to go for that. So it's over double what our current costs are for that, and with regard to the overall Weather Service budget, it's less. It's a tenth of a drop in the bucket or a hundredth of it. It's very tiny, but in the state that Weather Service funding is in right now, and NOAA in general, nobody is eager to pick up a new, let's say, O&M cost, because it would not go away for the foreseeable future and that sort of thing. So, but it's still true that the use of VLab is optional, so there's still within Weather Service even, there are users who are electing to do their own thing and purchase, other software, etc. So it is what it is. We can point a horse to water, but we can't make them drink. And if they have funds, apparently, to buy something else, they can. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're still working. We are hosted in NCEP's IDP, and that infrastructure hosting system, it continues to experience growing pains in its management, etc., that affect us, and can give you long stories about things. But we're trying to work with them, get our scheduled upgrade in place, but it's a challenge, and there are other things in IDP which ostensibly have a much higher priority than VLab, so we're kind of having to work with that. The other thing this is not a something I'm sharing, but I'm going to ask actually was to you, Brian, on the Ideas Marketplace. That was rolled out for use several months ago, and I saw a little flurry of activity in Eastern region, but I haven't heard a lot since. I'm just curious to know, what are you folks doing in Eastern with it, and what's the sort of status in its usage?
So the status is like everything. We've got so many things on the plate. People are having trouble, including myself, to really get the time to continue to encourage the usage. But one thing that we were going to bring up today, and maybe on some of the next calls, is Doug, who's the current lead of the VIT, had gotten some feedback, and maybe we want to encourage some other feedback and talk about what are some improvements we want to make to it, including what Ken Sparrow talked about earlier, if there's some feedback to improve it. So I think there's some opportunities not to just improve it from a technical aspect, but also to improve how we market it and pun intended, but market it and also get the word out to encourage people to use it. That's, I think, the best way forward, but we were going to talk about it in the next couple calls with the VIT as well.
Okay, that's fine. I haven't chatted with Dave Myrick either recently about this and the possible use of that functionality to support this labor relations innovation thing.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard much from him lately on it as well.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to talk with him about it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I still hope it's my idea that it's a good idea to have this. I just think it's going to take some pushing to really encourage its usage, if that makes sense.
Yes. No, well, like a lot of things, and I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of bandwidth that everyone has or doesn't have to do all these wonderful things that conceptually seem wonderful, but when you get to time, putting out fires is what we do, from the time we enter in the office until at least noon.
Yeah.
and then by the time 5 o'clock rolls around, you're not all of a sudden, okay, now I'm going to just dive in to the Ideas Marketplace, and so best intentions are not enough, and sometimes there's a lot more is needed to kind of move something to where it needs to be. And leadership can play a critical role in that. So I know Kate can vouch for this, but I mean, it really, I will say, gargantuan sea change over in EMC to get and to VLab would not be happening, period, if it weren't for Mike Farah's leadership as new EMC director. And so, that's what sometimes is required, not always. Sometimes grassroots efforts can drive stuff, and a lot of things in VLab have been grassroots driven, but sometimes you need both. In the case of these massive structural changes, I think, leadership is really key. And in the case of Weather Service, again, Louis Cellini has, although he's I don't know if he's satisfied or what, but I mean, he was really instrumental in getting VLab, messaging on VLab for a couple years very vigorously, and he still does. So it's all, as the longer I've been in the agency and know, how hard change is, I'm much more sanguine about some of these things, and I don't hold stuff over people's heads saying, well, 3 weeks after something has been introduced, why isn't anybody using it? It's much harder than that.
Yeah, and I think just keeping to push some of these things and your help and help of others is the only way to really. I know from, and I don't have as long of an experience in the Weather Service as you do, but it just the organizational inertia sometimes requires us to really push people in a different direction.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with it's the same thing with VLab in general. We are getting more usage of it, and you have been able to push some folks and say, hey, why not use VLab for this? And I think we're getting more movement toward it in certain areas. So you may not see as much of what you were talking about before, where people are just going out and buying new tools or doing other things. But it still happens. It still happens. It's just maybe not as frequent as it once was.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is that I think I view the VIT members as advocates, and I know you all are trying in your ways, different ways to move the cause forward, but we shouldn't beat ourselves up when we fall short in that, or things don't move quickly enough, or at all, etc. It's just the nature of the beast, and all we can be is steadfast in doubling down on trying to tackle things, make them more efficient, and reminding people of that, because and we have to talk to John offline here, but we need to revisit, at least in the case of Weather Service, our polling the Sus and Dos on stuff, because invariably, because we are working through the VIT and other means to knock off these tickets and improve small things, sometimes big things. People who haven't visited in a couple months or even longer, when they come back, they see significant improvements, and their minds can be changed, and rightfully so. So the effort to educate, market, is never ending in that sense, and but I believe that there's already enough, I will call, baseline work being done in VLab that it's a huge success, and I dare say a number of agencies would really relish to have something similar that they could draw upon. So I'll end my segment, and thanks John and Brian and for the opportunity. So go ahead, John. What's next, or Brian?
Yeah, just Steve, we thank you for joining. Apologies for, as the summer leave season and other things come up, we've had a little bit less participation. We are, as you know, still working on and John, I think, is going to touch on this, a VIT representative for NWS headquarters, and we're working to continue to go forward. So thanks for joining, and we'll look forward to the next time you're here.
You're welcome.
John, maybe first, I know you put it after my topics, but could you give us a status on the VIT representative for NWS headquarters?
Okay, first? So yeah, basically, as you recall from the last meeting, I had mentioned that we were undertaking a rather innovative and I think kind of an interesting approach to finding us a new team member, and it involved recruiting some folks from across headquarters to help with implementing the one-stop website across the other programs. And so this process is underway. The initial request was sent out and responded to. A number of folks have promised to join up and to help with this migration or embracing of the one-stop. So there's a period of time during which these folks who have volunteered to help with this sort of setup of their own website that would serve as their intranet. These folks, once they become experienced with the virtual lab and have sort of embraced the, sort of drunk the Kool-Aid maybe even, and become real supporters of the virtual lab, we will then sort of query them to see if we can find one or two of them who might be interested in coming on board to the team. So there is a period of time during which they're going to become familiar with the virtual lab, and after that period of time we'll approach them and see if we can get them to join on in. So things are moving along, and we're in a bit of a holding pattern at this point, but we'll keep you up to date as things go or move forward on the the migration to one-stop-like websites. Any questions about how we're going about this? All right, good enough. So that brings us back up to, I guess, our strategic planning team lead hunting efforts. And I know Brian was he was interested in perhaps leading us through a bit of a brainstorming session where we could figure out what exactly this team would do, what their goals would be, and that will help in finding a new person.
Yeah, so we have the email draft, and I haven't seen any additional comments, so I'm taking that to be that most folks are okay with the draft. And I was looking it over, and I was hoping to maybe get like 2 or 3 goals of the group to include, in addition to what we have about what the VLab standards recommendations are, but the strategic planning group would be specifically focused on. So I thought of a couple, and I'll throw them out there. And I know we've got a limited group here, but we'll start with this, and then we'll send them around and ask for feedback. So the first one I was thinking about was that the first goal would be to help direct future, to help encourage, sorry.
That's okay.
To help encourage future usage of the VLab with suggested enhancements. That's one. Second one that I was thinking about would be to identify any deficiencies with the VLab that prevents usage. So those were 2 things that I thought about. Throw it around to a couple folks on the call. Anybody else?
That sounds pretty good to me, Brian.
Yeah. How about
Okay.
Let's
start with that.
Is it okay for me to add?
Go ahead. It is fine.
So one thing that might be worth considering at least is looking for new technologies. let's see, technology, I'll spell it right here. I always make a good attempt. New technologies / applications that could enhance the VLab. So here I'm sort of thinking of, there's Redmine plugins, there's LifeRay plugins that, or portlets that perhaps could be brought to bear on particular problems or challenges within, our user community.
Or things even outside of that, new tools for collaboration in particular. I think collaboration is a very elusive thing, and but it's part of the mission. And there's it's implicit recognition that time goes by. Tools that we're using today will become obsolete. They will become dinosaurs. So we want to be looking ahead and attempting to anticipate, these things strategically, where we might go from where we are today. Understanding that it's planning is required for that, and doing, a major like VLab Next or something like that is best dealt with sort of in a gradual sense rather than a complete swap out. But having people look at those things would be, excellent.
Yep. I think that's a pretty good list right now. John, so the action, I guess, would be to put that into our meeting minutes and a post and request that by the next call we get any final feedback on this, both this and the email, and again, it has to be final. So hopefully, because we really want to get this going, so you can make that in your best email. You're good at wording emails, and you're good at making sure that people get in there. So in your best way possible, say 2 weeks from now, that is final.
All right.
And then we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
This is Steve Vango. I was wondering, do you want to include any words like promoting cross-fertilization between the communities and entities? VLab?
How's that, Steve?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for going in the better words.
Do you want fertilization? For
Yeah, that's misspelled.
Oh.
F-E-R. No,
Okay. Fertilization. There we go. That does look better. No spell check on my notepad.
yeah, that's good. Perfect. So yeah, put that to really get that in the next 2 weeks. Understanding that people are out of the office and other things, but want to move forward from here. I think we've got a couple of the items. These are some good things to add in. So that combined with the email. So I think that's it for that topic. Next on the agenda, I believe, was the ideas marketplace, and I'd rather, especially with the limited interaction right now, if you could John send another reminder and really push everybody to consider the suggestions and provide some feedback for ideas, that would be appreciated. And maybe create like I think you already created maybe a forum post or something, but that would be good to push people to direct them to the forum and try to get some more additional feedback.
Okay, sounds good.
And with that, we go on to open action item review.
All righty. Let's see, wrong one. Good. All right, no, it isn't. All righty, so let's take a look at our meetings from the last minute. I'm sorry, our minutes from the last meeting. And we have just a few items that are open, still languishing from meetings gone by. We'll scroll down here. I've highlighted them in green, making them easier to find. So Ken has been working diligently, I believe, on getting us a list of VIT members by VIT organization. I'm sorry, VLS team members by VIT organization. And is there an update on that, Ken? Or
No, I have not. I need to revisit this and figure out exactly what the how we want this to manifest itself. So in other words, is it needed within VLCS? It's been too long since this issue was created, or this action item was created. So
right.
I know that there's an email from, I think Brian actually sent me an email with an LDAP query that might be related. So I'll go back and revisit that. So,
okay.
And if I have any questions.
Here's the LDAP query. And I think ultimately what people would want is a way to direct email traffic. So the form would be a list of email addresses. But anyway, that's where we are on that one. And we have a couple back from June and July of last year. The first one deals with this team that we've been trying to stand up, the strategic planning team. And basically the team was charged with coming up with a charter. And so we were waiting to find a lead before we could press ahead with that. So we don't have a lead yet, so there'll be no progress. Tammy's not here today. She was going to meet at some point with Eric Rasmussen to talk about some suggestions he had made about how to improve the VIT, to see if there were, how to improve the VLST, well, VLab, and see if there were any potential VIT tickets in his input. And she has been planning to meet with him at some point, but I don't believe that's happened quite yet. And finally, we have another one related to the strategic planning team, where we were going to ask them to include policy topics potentially in the charter. So this would be, what sort of policy regarding the VLab, conceivably you could say it will be used by all project leads to track the project progress or something, So you could come up with policy type issues for recommendation within this strategic planning team. And I believe that is the last open one. So that completes our review of open action items. Which brings us to our open...
Sounds good. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up before we go on to new action item review? All right, what do we got for new action items?
Okay, so Ken took an action item to set up a Google Analytics ID for the FV3 community page. So he will have that on his plate. Let's see, there's an ideas marketplace. Let's see, wait a minute.
Just a question on that. Just a question on that.
Oh, sure.
Is there Google Analytics IDs for all? communities? I think I'd asked this before.
Yeah.
No, it's only ones that have requested it. So the way it works is that everything, all traffic and everything gets bundled under the main VLab. So we have an analytics ID for each of the VLab services, and then within VLCS we have IDs that fall under that for select communities. So that way, the community owners can go in and look at the details of traffic and such to their community.
Is that mentioned in our documentation?
I would have to go back and look and see. I don't know off the top of my head.
We do, Ken. We have some information in there on Google Analytics. Okay. Let me see if I can quickly pull it up here. Yeah, okay. So let's see. Oh. Okay, here we go. So here's our Google Analytics. Oops, come on. So it's in the user's guide. And basically it talks about, sort of how to do it if you want to set it up for your particular community. So anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can find it here under external ties. It's the third link down.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just want to make sure it was in there.
No, yeah, sure. We also, I have a action to basically with a 2-week suspense, ask folks to comment and provide input on the goals that we have prototyped today, brainstormed today, and I'll get that out as a forum post. Then also we have, I need to put out a reminder on ideas marketplace input, and maybe I think I didn't provide some of the other suggestions that had already been made sort of to stimulate the conversation, so I think I'll update that, let folks know what has been thought of to date, and then ask them to provide additional input. And those are the 3 action items that I have. Are there any others that I didn't that I missed? Okay. So it looks like our next meeting will be July 11th.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, John, Ken, and Steve, and we'll be in touch.
All righty. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.